Investments in transportation is actually not that complicated, and the time really has come to stop admiring the problem. The issues have been examined, the size and the scope of the problem has been discussed, analyzed, and measured now for many, many years. I've had the benefit and pleasure of traveling across the entire state over the last few years, in particular the last year, and have met with many local officials, county engineers, community leaders, business leaders, and they're stepping up and saying, we have to make these investments in our communities, in our economy, in our roadway, in our ability to allow people to get where they need to go. The simple fact is that we're not keeping up with what we've got. Roads and bridges are deteriorating. More people are moving here, and their ability to get around is becoming increasingly hampered. And as our economy continues to grow and improve, the ability for people to get to jobs, the ability of goods and services to get to market is just simply not keeping up with that need. And the lack of action costs all of us. Roads are less safe. Accidents cost us. Roads falling apart. Damaged vehicles cost us. And roads only become more expensive to fix. People can't get to work. We're hearing about the worker gap and the lack of jobs and opportunities. That costs us. Goods and services can't get to market or get to market much more slowly. That economic inefficiency costs us. Young people who choose to live in other places, we lose their ideas, their talent, their energy, and that costs us. Seniors forced out of their homes and forced out of our communities. People with disabilities forced out of their homes and out of our communities. We lose their ideas, their energy, their participation in our larger community, their ability to buy goods and services from local businesses. Losing their contributions costs us. We need more and we need better transportation. It needs to be cleaner and more efficient. We need a variety of choices and options. By some estimates, 1 million folks are going to be moving here over the next 10 or 15 years. We can't build enough new roads to accommodate all of those additional cars. We can't build enough parking lots to accommodate all those additional cars. We need an array of solutions in the mix. Better roads, better interchanges, bridges that keep standing, bicycle opportunities, pedestrian opportunities, and transit in greater Minnesota and the metro area. And local roads and bridges are an enormous part of our transportation system, and local pedestrian and bicycling opportunities are a part of our larger transportation system. The vast majority of those are supported by property taxes. We need to recognize the vital state-local partnership that goes into making sure that our transportation is thorough, it's robust, well-maintained, and is paid for in ways that make sense and that is fair. Innovations are key. Making sure that we're addressing efficiencies is also quite key, and the bill that we have before you speaks to some of those items as well. I'll give a very high-level and brief overview of the bill, and we've got some folks who are going to speak to some other parts of it in more detail. The experts that we have from across the state, who also happen to be members of the Transportation Committee. We have suburban representatives, regional centers and population center representatives, and folks from greater Minnesota, because we have a bill that really addresses the totality of need across the entire state. Probably what folks are most anxious and interested, I keep getting the question about the gas tax. We are going to raise a sales tax on gasoline construed on price of gasoline at the wholesale level of 6.5%. On license tab fees, which we haven't changed in quite some time, we keep the schedule the same on our license tab fees in terms of the depreciation value of cars. We raised that 0.25% from 1.25 to 1.5%. And we raised the minimum that you pay from $25 to $30. We haven't raised that since 1981. To pay for transit in the metropolitan area, we go to a full cent. We raise raise it by 3/4 of a cent. We go to a full cent in the metro area in all 7 counties, so that we keep up with and we are just kind of right in the mix with other metro areas of similar size. And we have general obligation bonding as well to take care of our local bridge needs, including our mega bridges, our local road needs, We address railroad crossings in that. We just got the report about the issues of railroad safety and railroad congestion and at-grade and grade separated crossings that might help resolve some of those problems. We invest in our regional rail, our smaller rail systems around the state through the bonding program. We also invest in passenger rail in our airports and our ports. We also have a public-private partnerships initiative in the bill. Like I spoke before, we asked the Department of Transportation to kind of renew their efforts that we initiated in 2008 on efficiencies, report on those efficiency measures, and build on those efficiency measures. And we asked for some additional transparency, some more collaboration and some disclosure on how the regular Surface Transportation Improvement Program is developed, how the list is established. Within the resources that we raise for the Highway User Tax Distribution Fund, we recognize that the key element, the key reason why we do transportation is be sure that we have successful economy, that we share prosperity. An initiative that we began in the last session, Corridors of Commerce, turned out to be extremely popular and really showed the need and the way we can make these investments across the state. And so we authorize $200 million in bonding for Corridors of Commerce every year for the next 4 years. An additional initiative that's been very, very successful that really allows the Department of Transportation to partner with local communities and local businesses is the Transportation and Economic Development Program. They work with the Department of Commerce, the Department of Economic Development on that initiative, and so we authorize $50 million in trunk highway bonds every year for the next 4 years for a total of $200 million. And then folks might not be aware we have a 5% that we kind of scoop off the top of the Highway User Tax Distribution Fund. That's called the Flex Fund. And every 6 years we're authorized to rejigger how we expend those dollars. We keep a number of those dollars flowing to townships, roads and bridges, but then we also allow some of those dollars go to cities. And we make sure that some dollars get over to small cities as well as the municipal state aid cities. And then we create another local tool for cities through the transportation districts, an initiative that Senator Carlson has offered for a number of years. So that's the very, very high-level overview of the provisions of the bill, and I'd like to invite Senator Jensen forward to speak to parts of the bill that she's interested in championing.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Dibble. Good morning. Since my time in the legislature, I've been working on infrastructure issues, and in particular, the transportation infrastructure that we use every day. What I discovered is that I had a lot to learn and that there are a lot of issues all across the state. Corridors of Commerce was a program that was established in recognition that there are problems across the state. As the 4 pages that I can show you of the projects that were submitted once the money, the $300 million originally, was put into the Corridors of Commerce program. I can also tell you the difference that it makes in a community when you realize there is hope that a project that has been out there for a number of years has some availability of some funding. We took into recognition last session that there is cash that needs to be available for those projects as well, so we can do some of the things to get them ready so they can qualify for Corridors of Commerce. There's a lot of work to do. This bill allows $800 million to be available to those projects that are not currently on the 20-year plan. Like I said, we can look at these numbers as forever. But the people are the ones that are affected. This is about, seriously, people are hoping that their road is safe enough, like the one in my district where the hospital chooses to airlift people rather than drive them on an unsafe road. We're finding solutions in this bill, and I'm extremely happy and thrilled that there are $800 million available through the Corridors of Commerce program. The other thing I'd like to highlight is Greater Minnesota Transit, the switch to a 50-50 split in that portion of the bill to allow people that are in areas where they are isolated and for some reason, whatever the reason is, they are not driving, they have some availability and access to a way to get to the doctor, to get to the grocery, and to see their family. We want to keep people in Greater Minnesota, and this portion of the bill allows that accessibility for funding for those people so that they can go about their lives and that we can keep people in greater Minnesota. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Senator Roger Reinert. My Senate district essentially covers the city of Duluth, so I want to make a couple comments from a regional center perspective. I think, first of all, Senator Dibble said well, I don't think there's a legislator here that doesn't know that this is not only the issue of the session, but really the issue that has been coming now for several years. I happened to, as a city councilor, be here in 2008 when the legislature conducted the override. And it's just sort of amazing to me how quickly we've had to come back to this conversation. But I think all of us as Minnesotans know the factors that are driving that. And so Senator Dibble talked about the number of different ways that revenues are being expended through this bill, not just roads, not just bridges, but transit as well. And when you come from a community like mine, Duluth, those transit connections are what keep you economically viable. And our regional centers stay economically viable in a state like Minnesota because we have multiple transit and transportation connections. So in my community, that means a freeway, that means an airport, that means rail, hopefully passenger rail, and it means a genuine port. You know, the Port of Duluth conducts some of the most tonnage of shipments throughout the entire United States. It's the #1 port for any facility not located on an ocean. All of those transportation connections matter. But then we also take a look at what funds come back to a community, especially a regional center, that draws people in. You know, in our community, we employ the vast majority of people in a significant area around us. It's not just people that live in Duluth at night, it's the people that are there during the day. So things like the increase of over 40% in municipal state aid funds back to communities is going to be significant for a community like Duluth. Things like investments, bonding investments in our ports, in our airports, and setting aside some money for passenger rail. You know, if Washington ever reauthorizes the Federal Rail Act, the passenger rail project between Duluth and the Twin Cities is there. It's ready to go and creates yet another strong transportation connection. But the thing I will close with, and the thing that I think is most important that we do this session, is add something in other than a per gallon gas tax. Everyone I have talked to, consumers and drivers, citizens in Minnesota, understand that with more fuel efficient vehicles, with non-gas vehicles, we have to figure out some other way to support this system. And a per gallon gas tax just doesn't do it anymore. And so some sort of sales tax, which this bill includes, and I will say that the Senate Transportation Committee included in our bill 2 years ago, is a step in that direction. Is this the ending point? It probably isn't, but at least it's the very correct first step that we need to take. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Susan Kent. I'm from Woodbury, and I represent a district that includes Woodbury, Maplewood, Oakdale, and Landfall. I'm also the vice chair of the Senate Transportation and Public Safety Committee, and so I have had the opportunity to sit in that committee for a couple of years now and listen to people, county engineers, my colleagues, my legislative colleagues from around the state come forward with remarkable and diverse and significant needs. Senator Dibble did a great job of outlining the general context of that. It involves public safety, it involves efficiency, it involves getting our goods and our people to work and back to our homes and our neighborhoods. And we are not addressing these needs in our current approach. And one of the things that I've really come to appreciate both in my work on the committee and throughout my community is that these are serious challenges and they require serious solutions. We need to have real solutions that are sustainable, that will work for us moving into the future. Transportation is never a short-term problem and there are never short-term fixes. We have to be serious about this and keep working on it, and that is why I think this approach is going to make a tremendous difference as we move forward. As I speak from the suburban perspective, and I live in Washington County, which represents a real sort of diverse community in terms of more dense areas versus areas that are really fairly rural, we have the kinds of needs that are represented throughout the entire state. We need transit, we need better and more efficient and better maintained roads and bridges. Our counties are really crying for this kind of support. Senator Jensen mentioned the 50-50 split on the lease vehicle tax. I'm glad we're able to maintain that because that is an important source of revenue for the suburban counties around the metropolitan area. So I would just wrap up by saying I think we're headed very much in the right direction that we need. This is basic math. We've got to be serious about this and come up with a solution that will be sustainable into the future. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Senator Dibble. This is very courageous of him to step up and offer these solutions that are cried for, asked for, and begged for from our communities, from our trucking industry. Oh, sorry, I'm Senator Jim Carlson from, I represent Egan and Burnsville. And back to the trucking industry, they have asked us for better transportation. They've, the Itasca project and CEO Mr. Davis from the U.S. Bank has told us that the trucking industry is suffering $232 million in excess costs because of the congestion of our roads. The I-494 35 intersection is the 17th worst in the nation, and it needs, it's crying for upgrade. This is painful. It's painful for me because no one ever wants to vote for a revenue increase. Senator Dibble and I were here in 2008 when we did that. We did that and we staved off some of the pain that happened, that would have happened had we not made those choices. This was a vote that we took that no one ever thanked us for, and we expect perhaps we'll take another one that no one will thank us for. But it's time to stop admiring the problem and do something. We have a tremendous bill here that Senator Dibble has put together, and what it does is it answers the questions. Our counties have been asking, can you get us more revenue? My two cities have been asking, can you get us more revenue? The greater Minnesota cities have been asking, can you get more revenue? Also, as part of that, if you can get more revenue, give us the ability to decide for ourselves. So in this bill is a lot of wording that allows the cities and the counties to direct the revenue by themselves and make their own choices. So I think that this is one of the best bills that we have seen. It's the best bill that I have seen in my time in the legislature. And it also fixes a problem for a long time in the future. So I appreciate Senator Dibble including my bill, which was the street maintenance districts, which has been asked for by the greater Minnesota cities for years. This is the ability for these smaller cities that otherwise have very little options for revenue to be able to put in their ordinances a method to collect the same as the charter cities have already across the state, the larger cities. So the statutory cities will be able to do the same thing. So I appreciate your coming, and thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to Senator Dibble.
Good morning. I'm not Senator Dibble, State Senator Melissa Franzen. I represent Senate District 49, which includes Edina, West Bloomington, Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, and I'm just here as a supporter, being on the Senate Transportation and Public Safety Committee. We've been talking about this issue for many years in my last 2 years in the Senate, but it's time to stop talking about it and to actually do something about it and take action. So I think the bill that we're proposing from the Senate, and I want to thank Senator Dibble, is a holistic approach to really tackling our infrastructure needs in Minnesota, not just bridges and roads, but also transit. I think we have a job to do ahead of us to educate the public in the need, not only for businesses, but for commuters. Every day you get on the road or you take some mode of transportation, metro mobility, you name it, you touch the system, or the products that you buy touch the system when you purchase them at a retail store. I am really happy to really support this bill. As you know, 2 years ago, we voted on this in the Senate floor for a gas tax, and we will do it again because we know that that's the investment needed in Minnesota. But we also have to really educate the public and get your input to really know why this is needed and why our funds have been depleted. And we don't have the choice to be cutting on education or health and human services. This is a choice of, do we want to invest in infrastructure and transportation or really suffer the consequences along the road? road. You know, the other side talks about using existing funds. They're just not there, and we have to do a better job really telling the public why this is so and why this is needed. I'm, again, very supportive of this package. I look forward to talking to all stakeholders about it so we can come together and really do this in a bipartisan manner. I represent Senate District 49, and my colleague, my counterpart in the House, Representative Ron Earhart, lost his seat in his party because he took a vote to override the veto back in 2008. That shows you that we have people on our side in terms of having this debate be a nonpartisan debate and really talking about the needs of our state. And we're here standing up to really get your input and your support to make this happen this year. Thank you.
Thanks. So that kind of wraps it up. I'm sure you don't have any questions, so thank you. So, questions? Yeah.
On the cost of the bill, it says total new revenue $796 million in 2016, but we heard the Department of Transportation talk about this in a 10-year time frame. I mean, should we expect that amount of revenue to be generated every year going forward, or is that just
Right, and it would be a little bit more than that, because I think 2016 is like an eight-month horizon, so it would be a bit north of $800 million, yes, every year, you know, of all sources and all modes taken together.
And with the wholesale gas tax, would you scrap the current tax and
No.
replace it with that, or is that on top of?
This would be on top of our existing revenues, yeah. And I want to say a couple of quick things about that, just some details about that. First of all, that would be, the price would be calculated only one time per year, so on an annual basis. So basically it would be calculated August 1st for the preceding year. And then it would go into effect on October 1st of that year. It would be, of course, calculated on the wholesale price of gasoline, but then immediately converted into a gas tax equivalent, just to, you know, for ease of administration, because that's kind of how people calculate how they pay their taxes now, and there's issues of interstate commerce with the trucking industry, so that addresses that. There's another issue that's been out there now for the better part of a couple of weeks, and that's the constitutional dedication of that source. I'm going to say this as clearly as I possibly can. This source of revenue is constitutionally dedicated to roads and bridges. Constitutionally has to be deposited into the Highway User Tax Distribution Fund. It is not statutorily dedicated. It is not able to be flexed for transit purposes. It is constitutionally dedicated in the exact same identical way that gas taxes are presently, as construed on the per gallon basis. The only difference in this particular source is how it's calculated. It's collected in the exact same manner, in the exact same place as the current gas tax is.
Senator, the public-private partnership program, could you expand a little bit more on that, maybe provide an example?
Sure, and that's a pilot that we authorized the Department of Transportation to undertake if they so choose, so it's authorizing language. And public-private partnership is an umbrella term for many different ideas. So it would allow for innovations in finance, innovations in program delivery. The Department of Transportation is doing a number of these already in different slices of public-private partnerships. Might contract with a private entity to maintain a certain segment of a freeway or a bridge or something like that.
The registration fee, is it just the 25 to 30, or is there also some adjustment in the valuation end of it?
So the license tab fee, so the schedule remains the same. So the value of your vehicle is calculated over the course of 11 years. It reduces 10% every year. So the schedule remains the same, and then you get down to the minimum after 11 years, which is the presently 30 now, or presently 25, now will be 30. But it's raised, so the percent that you pay would go from 1.25 to 1.5% per year. Then, of course, there's the $10 base that everyone pays, and then the amount that you pay calculated on the price of your vehicle. And then once you get down to that minimum, you pay continue to pay the minimum $10. And presently we pay then, the minimum that you pay is $25 plus $10, $35. After 11 years, that would be $40. That hasn't been raised since 1981, by the way. So
now or later, do you have some examples of cars at various ages and prices that you could convert under your new formula so people could see the difference?
Later. I don't have that here.
Today later?
Sure, yeah.
Can you also today later provide us how much each of these bullet points is going to bring in a year? Some of this you have percentages, some you have dollar figures, so you can't have them up.
Yeah, we have that now. That was not distributed. We could probably distribute that. We have the revenue document here, so we'll make copies of that.
In particular, there's been a lot of focus given to the efficiencies in the Department of Transportation. If you could talk a little about how much money you guys think you can save per year from efficiencies there, and where those efficiencies are going to come from.
I don't have an amount pegged, but I actually think the Department of Transportation has done a pretty good job. We initiated the efficiency effort in 2008, and Charlie Zelli has been going around talking about the dollars that have been saved and redirected and reprogrammed into lots and lots of new projects. So 10, 20, $30 million here and there has been identified as an efficiency that the Department of Transportation has been able to identify because they've turned in projects more quickly or used better materials or just delivered a program at a lower cost, built a facility at lower cost. They're able to book those dollars, and then you saw the big announcement last fall of the number of projects that then they were able to fund sooner than they had anticipated. So it's an important thing for us to be doing and talking about. And keep in mind, efficiency is a very, very broad umbrella term. What I would like to see the Department of Transportation do is not think of efficiency so much as trying to cut corners at the expense of turning in high-quality projects or being penny-wise and pound-foolish and cutting out things that are pretty essential for us to be doing as an agency, but thinking more broadly. How do we deliver, how do we connect our transportation decisions more closely to our land use decisions, for example, and making sure that at the very, very front end we're thinking about the right mode. Transit, for example, is a far more efficient way to get people down the road than adding a whole additional lane. The best example, I love to talk about this, is bus rapid transit in the 35W corridor coming from the southern suburbs up to downtown Minneapolis. When that is fully implemented, we will be moving the equivalent of 2.5 lanes of general purpose traffic in those buses up 35W. Imagine how expensive it would be to add an additional 2.5 lanes of general purpose traffic in the 35W corridor. First of all, it would be impossible because you've had so much right-of-way that you'd have to acquire, and you have to knock down so many homes and so many businesses. That's pretty efficient, and so we should be having some of those kinds of conversations.
So the $796 million figure does not include any savings from efficiency?
No.
Okay.
Senator, how does this plan compare in a broad sense to what the governor's been talking about? Pretty similar? Any major differences?
I think it's pretty similar. I haven't seen his proposal, but I've been listening to what he's been saying in the press and in public forums, and I think it's pretty consistent with what the governor's been discussing. And of course, it's not coincidental. We're hearing the same things from the same parties in the same way across the state. Move Minnesota, the coalition of 200+ organizations. We've measured the problem pretty accurately and pretty effectively through the Transportation Finance Advisory Committee.
Senators Jensen, Kent, and Franzen, one or all of you, could you address how, when it came time to raise taxes for the general budget, none of you wanted to go there, but you're on board with this plan. What's the difference in your thinking?
Senator Vicki Jensen, thank you for the question. This is something that is very and extremely difficult to do, is to decide whether you want to impose a tax on someone and what does that go for. I did have some problems with the tax bill when it came out and specific provisions that were within that, and I had to decide as a representative of my district how I felt that would be reflected and what the outcome would be to them. My choice was to vote no. When it comes to this infrastructure issue, I can't think of another path. I can't find another path that will lead us to the kind of solutions that we need across the state without some increase in revenue. With Senator Dibble taking the approach that he's taken, it allows us to have dedicated, sustainable funding for our roads, trunk highways, county roads that need state aid, and our city streets. And then portion of that goes to our bridges. I know that that is something that the entire state is crying for, and especially within my district. So without seeing another path, I have to make the decision. What is the impact and the outcome going to be? The outcome is we're going to have to pay for a transportation system that gives us the kinds of solutions and the kinds of things we need. Accessibility, safety, and good economic roadways that bring economic people to our state and also bring what comes with that, added revenue, added income, added taxes on the revenue side. So for me, this makes absolute sense, and I voted for it the first session, and I voted for it on the floor, I voted for it in committee, and not only that, I've advocated ever since I've been here that we have to do this. This is the only path I see.
Follow up on that before you leave. How much more revenue would this bill bring in?
How much more revenue would this bill bring in?
You said you'd gain more revenue because of all this. How much more?
Sure. I can't tell you how much more, but I know if we keep at the rates that we're going, and the way that we're doing this, where we have roads out there for 50 years that have no completion, like Highway 14 in my district, it wouldn't bring none. I mean, we need that infrastructure to attract the kind of thing, and that's why corridors is called corridors of commerce, because it will attract, and it will keep people, and it'll attract more people to those areas. But among that, the most important thing is those roadways are getting a 40% increase in freight traffic, at least Highway 14 is. And so the safety of the other people that have to travel that road has to be taken into consideration, and I think that is the most important aspect.
Senator Dibble, you've heard, I presume, the opening offer from, oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Just a very quick comment to your question. My background is in marketing, so oftentimes when I'm looking at these issues, I think of the brand of Minnesota. And from an economic development standpoint, you know, what can we do that hurts or helps build Minnesota's economic future? One of the best examples of that is our education system and the fact that we have a world-class workforce that has been an investment that Minnesota has made for generations. It has put us where we are now in terms of success, and we need to continue doing that. My concern with the tax bill was that there were aspects of it that I thought might not be in the best interest for the economic development future, and that's why I voted no in that case. It was a pretty narrow issue that I had, and I liked some of the earlier Senate versions that had come up. But in this case, I know full well, listening to business people in my community, listening to, for example, 3M that is in my district, who is facing a rash of retirements in the coming years and will need to attract people from outside of the state to come here. And we need the infrastructure that is going to draw people and businesses and jobs here. And infrastructure is such a huge part of that. So that's why I think this is another critical investment for Minnesota's future.
Touch base on that too. Thank you for your question. Melissa Franzen, again, Senator from District 49, and I again also voted against the tax bill. And the question here is need. I saw the need in transportation from even before I got here, talking to constituents and people in the campaign trail. We really know that there is a need for more investments in transportation. There's no doubt about that. It benefits our communities, it benefits our businesses, it benefits all of us. In terms of the transportation bill, these two other senators that we're just talking to, we were part of the freshman insurrection, if we will, back 2 years ago when we actually talked to Majority Leader Bach and said we want to take this vote to be on the record that we support this. This is what we ran for. We know there's a need, and that's really what's driving us today, that we know that that need is unmet. And contrary to the tax bill, I didn't see the need for increasing high earners taxes for our state budget. But here it's definitely a different beast. We need to tackle it, and this is the only dedicated way to do that, and that's why it has my full support.
You've seen the sort of opening offer from the House Republicans. Can you comment on that and also on just the larger political problem of trying to convince them to vote for these gas tax increases?
That will be a problem. I think they've already articulated that they're unwilling to make these kinds of investments. So they say, but at the same time, I just want to say that I tip my hat to those who are trying to articulate a more responsible approach, not closing the door completely, wanting to be open to a conversation, wanting to be open to some debate. The fact of the matter is the bill that we offer provides a sustained source of investment that has been well identified over the course of many years, that is needed. It's not a one-time shot. It's It keeps in mind a return on investment over a period of time, keeps in mind the work of the Department of Transportation and their ROI analysis, return on investment analysis, the Itasca project and their return on investment analysis. And we know from the federal state highway commissioners professional association that when you invest these kind of dollars, you get a more than 2-to-1 return in road and bridge investments. You get about a 6-time return for every dollar you put in. Those are returns that come in the form of delivering projects more quickly, so you're not delivering them more expensively and allowing inflation to grow the price of delivering those projects. You've got, like I talked before, you're not damaging your cars, you're fixing roads before they get more expensive to fix, and you're attracting more economic productivity, more economic efficiency. You're investing in transportation infrastructure that lets you use land use more efficiently. So I think we have a really responsible approach. Failure to act costs money. It's just whether you're going to pay out of your back pocket or you're going to pay out of your front pocket, do a proactive investment, and realize greater prosperity for the state of Minnesota. So, we're at the very start of session. We're going to engage in a conversation that's exclusive to the Senate. We're got 2 chambers in this body, so we'll have our debate and discussion among senators and see what makes the most sense. Send a bill to the House, and then we'll have a negotiation, and we'll see what happens. I think the governor has really shown a leadership and his desire to get something really productive done for the state of Minnesota as well. So, we got great leadership out of the executive branch, out of the Metropolitan Council, and out of the Department of Transportation as well. So I think we're in good shape.
Chairman, if I understood you right, I think you said the lack of transportation money has caused disabled, elderly, and young to leave their homes. Can you quantify that somehow?
Yeah, well, I think the state demographer, we asked the other day at the One Minnesota event, how good a job are we doing at hanging on to the 20-somethings? And she said, we're not doing a very good job.
But how's it relate to transportation specifically?
Because young people, particularly in the urban areas and in the regional centers, suburban areas as well, are really looking for those kinds of communities that offer a certain quality of life and transportation alternatives and options, the kind of neighborhoods where you have a whole array of ways to get around, have things that are located in proximity to one another. I have myself a number of young friends who have left Minneapolis, which is really starting to gain some ground. The North Loop is looking fantastic, and yet they're looking at places that are kind of happening and popping. And we hear from the Itasca project, and we hear from Greater MSP. When they're doing the site selection, trying to appeal to large corporations to locate their operations here, and they're telling us that the creative emerging workforce, that's creating the next whiz-bang products, whether that's for Target or for software companies or medical device companies, they're first looking for where to live in those cities that deliver that kind of vibrant vitality in their neighborhoods. And that's spurred and sparked by great transportation transit options. And the numbers show, the demographics show, we're just not hanging on to the 20-something cohort.
Just a pacing question. Yeah. Second week of session, are you putting this out here for people to chew on for a couple of months, or is this something that you guys are going to push through rapidly in the early going?
I don't know the answer to that question. If I had my way, this is a perfect bill in every way, and we're just going to run it through the hearing process, get it up the floor, and get it over. I suspect we'll have a little bit of time to debate the issues. I don't know what the timing is. Probably have to work with my leadership on that. But it was important to get this bill in now, soon, early in the session, because transportation is such a big issue, and we need to really highlight it and really start this debate and this discussion.
Other than the rail crossings, do you have any other rail safety language in your bill?
No.
And how much for rail crossings?
For rail crossings, we have, let me just get that number for you. Here we are. So for the grade separated rail crossings, $122 million that then has to be matched by the railroad industry, dollar for dollar. And then for at-grade crossings, we have $5 million, which also would then need to be matched dollar for dollar by the railroad industry.
And is that mainly for oil train, or is it for any railroad crossings?
It's a lot of these have to do with both safety and congestion issues. A lot of that, of course, is driven by the oil train issues, and those dollars are derived out of the railroad crossing study and report that was just delivered by the Department of Transportation.
That was only dealing with oil routes, if I remember, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you're talking about.
Right.
Senator,
Yeah.
is the metro area sales tax dedicated to transit only?
For the most part, yes, the metro area sales tax is dedicated to transit with some provisions for flexibility. Some portion of it is devoted to bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure as well as planning. And then about 1/8 of a cent is then flexed for road and bridge purposes in most of the counties when there's some sort of a connection or a nexus to transit. You know, I talked, for example, about the 35W corridor, things, that sort of thing. So.
Would that help the state fulfill its obligation for Southwest Light Rail?
Yes. Yes, the sales tax for transit would definitely allow the state. And we could use that source and not have to go to the general obligation bonding bill. So.
Thank you.
Oh, there's one more from my constituent who's not actually a reporter, but an interested citizen. Yes?
Hi, I think I was a little late. I took the light rail over here. You look at Dave's plan, it really is 2/3 for roads and bridges, about 1/3. It's the half a cent dedicated transit, which really looks like a giant light rail earmark.
So do you have
The Republicans have a lot of problems with that.
All right.
Here's my question. Suppose you divide that up into the 2/3 that's roads and bridges and the 1/3 that's transit light rail. Suppose the Republicans are willing to go all the way on the revenue dollar amount, but maybe putting it into a bonding bill or financing and structuring differently. If you can get agreement on the dollars that you're talking about for roads and bridges, say for 10 years, guaranteed, put it in a constitutional amendment, how close do you think that would be to a victory? Do you think that could be a way to do a deal? Just look at 5 months instead of 10 years? Could that be a deal?
Well, stay tuned. Thank you. All right.